Firefighters continue to work hard to try and smother out the flames that are affecting many communities in British Columbia. But has the province done everything it could to help them do so? Joining us to discuss just that will be Nechako Lakes BC MLA and the leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia, John Rustad.
And I don't know whether it's just the people haven't organized or whether the government hasn't stepped up to the plate to work with the people in the community. But I mean, the local people on the ground know their community best. They know the situation. If they've got skills and equipment, they can be a huge asset in fighting fires, especially in a situation now where the main fire has gone through and they're dealing with spot fires and trying to protect property. And so it's, seeing so many similarities, but this was the same thing I saw in 2017, 2018, 2021, now again in 2023. You would think government would have learned by now.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and a heavy rainfall that has fallen in some of the hardest hit communities affected by the ongoing wildfires in British Columbia has been a godsend to the firefighters who are trying to smother out those flames. We've seen many in the community come together to try to help the over 27,000 evacuees, some who I'm hearing are being able to come back to their homes right now as we speak. But we're also hearing many reports of citizens who are unhappy with how they've been treated during this time. This video I'm about to show you is from a woman who runs a food truck called BT's. She says she had many supplies to offer and instead was trapped in her home instead of being able to deliver them.
We've now been locked to our houses and have all these supplies and resources sitting here, and we're not able to go anywhere. We have RCMP and conservation everywhere right now. They're monitoring my driveway. They're not letting us deliver food to anybody. So we've had so many locals just here in Scotch Creek. I don't know what Solista and Lake Creek are looking like right now, but it's pretty brutal.
Now, that's just one example of what we're hearing from some of the citizens. Another example is a post that's since gone viral from a couple named Steph and Lauren who claim to live very close to the shoe swap area and also claim that a fire department as well as forestry set up a backburn during high winds without giving them proper notification. They say there was just some posts put up at the gas station. Of course, not everybody would know that that was coming to them. And of course, they're saying that negatively impacted them. I did make contact with Steph. She says at this moment, she's a bit overwhelmed. And again, this post did go viral. But joining us today will be MLA John Rustad. He's going to talk about his opinions on how the province could have done better, both in prevention as well as responding and how they're treating the citizens. I'm also going to ask him a question about what he thinks about the federal government jumping and summarizing this whole thing as an example of climate change. Let me know in the comments what you think about that as well. I also want to let you know if there are people who do want to help out, it has to be done safely, of course. One way you can do so is by donating to the Red Cross, who already has approval to go ahead and help in this area. And you should also know that Rebel News is currently planning to send a team to have our boots on the ground, just like we did for you for finding the truth about the Maui fires recently. We're going to head out as close as we can, safely, of course, talk to the people. And a way to support our journalism in doing so is donating what you can at rebelfieldreports.com. Here's Mr. Rustad. And joining us now is Nechako Lakes BC MLA and leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia, John Rustad. Thanks for being back at Rebel News.
Thanks for having me on, Dre.
Now, as a journalist, I'm getting plenty of stories. Some people are sharing posts. I'm also, of course, in community groups of communities affected by the fires. And of course, there's devastation from the fires, but I'm also hearing citizens who are unhappy with the way they're being treated in it. As an MLA and leader of a party, what are you hearing from the citizens? What's some of the main concerns they're having with how they're being treated?
I think the main concern is the disrespect that the government has had for people who have decided to stay behind and fight for their homes and fight for their property. Lots of other people are complaining about lack of information, not being able to get in and access. It's a very difficult situation, and when you have serious wildfires, and particularly if you're in a heavily wooded area and you've got a fast-moving fire, you need to think about safety first. You need to think about evacuating. Where you've got more open area, where you've got people with experience, with some equipment, if people are going to decide to stay behind, government can't force them to leave. And so the big thing I keep hearing is those people that have decided to stay behind are being basically held hostage. They're not allowing supplies through. They're being tried to be forced out. I had this situation in 2018 where essentially, the process was to try to starve people out of the area. Supplies had to be snuck in. They were running the lake at night to run blockades. They punched a road around the west side of a lake to get supplies in. And I mean, this just should not be the way government treats their citizens.
Absolutely. Now, you represent constituents in Nechako Lakes. Recently, there's been evacuations for previous fires in that area over the summer. Are you seeing anything that you believe the province could be handling different in those fires, or even the ones we're seeing that are still spreading today?
In the case of my riding in the Nechako Lakes, we had, because of the previous fires from 2018, we had a lot of community organization going on, having cash supplies, having the ability to be able to bring people together. So we had a lot of community response. In addition, with the fire service, there was more coordination that went on. I'm not seeing that in the Shuswap, and I don't know whether it's just the people haven't organized or whether the government hasn't stepped up to the plate to work with the people in the community. But I mean, the local people on the ground know their community best. They know the situation. If they've got skills and equipment, they can be a huge asset in fighting fires, especially in a situation now where the main fire's gone through and they're dealing with spot fires and trying to protect property. And so it's, seeing so many similarities, but this was the same thing I saw in 2017, 2018, 2021, now again in 2023. You would think government would have learned by now.
So what do you think should be the main changes in these areas? I guess it would be more for prevention coming around.
One of the things I think that is critical is really to organize local groups. Make sure that they've got supplies, make sure that there's training in place, make sure that they're enabled to be able to respond, that they don't need to have the ministry come in and guide them so that they can respond quickly. There's some great technology out there, particularly some good technology out of the Kootenays that could be used, that we could have in place in various areas. But really, I think we need to rethink how we do firefighting in this province. The most important thing is to get at fires early, get at them right away. And, I keep hearing these examples, fire season after fire season, where fires start, ministry people are too busy, they can't get in and look, local crews aren't allowed to go in and respond, and then the fire gets out of control. We need to be doing better on terms of being able to access this. We need to be able to use resources. We shouldn't be using so much of a command and control type structure.
Absolutely. So I'm hearing that there's around 370 fires still active today as we're filming this in BC, 40% of which are out of control. Now, this is sort of, there's not just the province that comes together to fight the fires. There's private fighting, the federal government gets involved. The federal governments, for example, Deputy Prime Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, spoke earlier about the fires and sort of also lumped it all into climate change.
I really believe, having just a couple of days ago, being up in northern Alberta in the Peace Country, having met people fleeing forest fires, it just brought home to me in that really personal way how devastating the impact of climate change is. It's not a theory anymore. It's something that so many people are feeling across the country.
The federal government is very much emphasizing that there needs to be more action with climate change to prevent fires like what we're seeing in BC. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's completely misleading. There's no question our climate is changing, and we know we're seeing these dry periods, we're seeing droughts that we're going through. But you have to look at the history of what we've done. Predominantly through the landscape, fire was natural. For thousands of years, fire was the dominant feature on the landscape. And then back in the early 1950s, we got really good at putting out fires. We had invention of pumps and good hoses and these types of things. And so our forests, instead of going through the natural case of burning and renewing, our forests got a lot older than they normally would have. The fuel loads built up. It became more susceptible to forest health issues such as pine beetle. That has all contributed to the situation we have today, where we have large fuel loads, they're very dry, and when you have a fire that starts, it becomes very big. So really, you need to look at how we have managed our landscape over 70 years, not just blaming climate change and saying that we need to pay a carbon tax or stop cows from farting to change the climate.
And for those who are just learning more about the Conservative Party of British Columbia, or maybe they already know about it, what would your party do, if anything different, if you became the leading party at some point when it comes to fighting and preventing fires?
Should we have the honor and privilege of forming government in 2024, we would take quite a different approach. We would be enabling local communities. We would make sure that they've got the supplies in place. We would look at how we respond to fires. We would stop this command control. We certainly would not be this authoritarian type government that tells its citizens what to do and then brings in police to try to force it when people decide not to follow the advice of government. But I also think some of the key things. Private sector fights fires very differently than the public sector. Why do they do that? For example, we have pipelines crews, and what they put in place to protect their assets is they put in many, many, many kilometers of 8-inch pipe with daisy chaining pumps, being prepared to be able to fight a fire, putting sprinkling systems in place. We don't see government doing that. We knew 3 days in advance that we were going to have a major wind event coming through the Okanagan. We knew that there was going to be problems. What was the response? Did we put mass watering systems in place? Did we try to create a curtain of moisture and a climate to try to help slow it down or prevent it? Were structural protection units put in place? I didn't see any of that happening in the days leading up to this. And so once again, it's more of a reactionary type approach instead of a proactive approach. All those sort of things need to be changed, and certainly a Conservative government in the province of British Columbia would do things differently.
Well, there you have it. Thanks very much, MLA John Rustad. And we will keep following this, as I'm sure you're also following it too. Thanks for being on Rebel News.
Thanks. And my thoughts and prayers are certainly to those that have been impacted by this. This is such a challenging time for so many people. Thanks for having me on.
Well, let us know in the comments what you think about what MLA Rustad had to say. And of course, another reminder, if you want to donate and help the community, the Red Cross is a good way to do so. We will provide more information on how to donate in the link for this article, which you can find in the description box below. And if you want to support our efforts, we will be setting up a plan to try to get reporters as close to here to give a voice to the community members. And to do so, there will be expenses involved. So you can go to rebelfieldreports.com to chip in to cover those expenses.